Hello again. Welcome back to the channel. And if you're new here, welcome. Today we're going to talk about zero feedback buyers. My name is John. I'm a full-time eBay reseller based in Melbourne, Australia. And every other day I'll see a post on one of the Facebook groups I'm part of where a seller will say, is it safe to sell to a buyer with zero feedback? Should I cancel a purchase that's been made? I'm not sure if they're going to pay. Or will I have problems with this buyer because they don't know how to use the platform? Every which way, right? eBay lets you actually block certain buyers with feedback under a certain number. So we'll get to that later. But the first thing I wanted to address is the motivation behind these posts. I'm not saying all of them are like this, but sometimes I get the feeling when the question is asked, and generally as a blanket statement without context, it's done out of fear. It's done because somebody somewhere read that a zero feedback buyer did something, whether it was to initiate a return that was dodgy, whether it was to say they never got an item when they actually did, whether it was to file a chargeback with their credit card to get a refund on an item that they clearly got, and then for the seller to lose out. I get all of that, and all of that is possible. But to operate a business with that fear as the starting point does not make sense. Let me explain. When I go to a new town, whether I'm on holiday or whether I'm just visiting a client in a different part of Melbourne, generally I'll stop by in a cafe, right? When I go into a cafe, oftentimes I've never been there before. I do not know what to expect. And most cafes have staff and owners who are quite welcoming. They assume that I will buy, they assume that I will pay, and they assume that I will enjoy what they give me. They don't expect otherwise. In fact, it'll be a very weird experience for me to go into a cafe, for the owner to stare at me because they've never seen me before, for the staff to then also mirror that staring. And then when I sit down to order, to have them look at each other suspiciously, like, make sure he doesn't run away, or make sure he doesn't touch this or touch that, or if he orders this, make sure he that's a pretty shitty experience, right? And that only happens if the seller is so obsessed with trying to protect themselves, they give no thought to the buyer experience. So a lot of these posts, when I read them about zero feedback buyers and their potential dangers, it gives me that vibe. It gives me the vibe that this seller hasn't actually thought about the buyer experience that they want to deliver. And they're actually robbing themselves of this opportunity to create and craft this bespoke business that only they can create. The beauty of reselling is that you can put together so many different types of products and call it your store. And that store suits a certain type of buyer at a certain price point, at a certain listing style, at a certain the way they like to look at certain photos, at a certain fulfillment style, right? All of those things that you bring to the business because you are the business owner. If you act out of fear and if you just assume the worst from all your buyers, especially those who have no track record, it's going to ruin your business. So that's my take on it. I sell to zero feedback buyers all the time. Sometimes they could all the reasons why zero feedback can be bad. Let me tell you how it can be good. Number one, someone who just joined eBay and literally discovered the wonder of eBay, zero feedback. Oftentimes grandparents who have just discovered the wonder of eBay, and they are so thankful. They leave the longest feedbacks because they're just so appreciative. They go, "You were so helpful. You are the store that I come back to all the time. I do not need to look for anybody else," and that leads to just them telling everybody, I found this store. They don't even tell people that they found eBay. They just tell people, I found this store. Because I'll get messages from those people that they told. They'll say, "Oh, Helen told me about your store, so I just looked it up on Google and I just went straight to your store." And that's great marketing, right? But it's because you gave them a chance and you delivered the consistent good service that you do for everybody, whether they be zero feedback or 20,000 feedback. Zero feedback buyers can also be buyers who just want separate accounts. Some people have their reasons for why they want separate accounts. They could be buying, just like how you have a credit card for one thing and a credit card for another thing. Some people prefer to have one account set up with one payment method for the business, and then another account set up with another payment method for personal use. Some people may have an account set up because their kids save money and the debit card that's linked to that account is the account that their kids put their savings into. So whenever they come to buy a toy, it's that account that gets debited and the kid sees a transaction, right? Don't question why buyers have zero feedback. Allow them to prove you, I guess, right, that your faith was justified. And then what you'll find, and that's been my experience, in the categories of baby clothes, in the categories of toys, collectibles, is that problems do happen across the spectrum of feedback buyers, not just the zero ones, even those with high feedback, because circumstances usually cause bad behavior. People not factoring enough money, people forgetting to pay. That happens across the board. It's a human behavior thing. It's not because of a zero feedback thing, right? The actual dodgy feedback, zero feedback buyer that I get, I reckon it would be like 1 in 2,000 sales that I do. And if I let a 1 in 2,000 thing affect how I run my business and how I deliver my service, if that's how I'm going to teach my team, and if that's what I'm going to choose to teach and compound in my business, that's a pretty sad business, and I definitely will lose my joy. So that's my view on zero feedback buyers. Sell to them and see what happens. Actually notice the good feedback, the good zero feedback buyers as well, and do your own math, right? For the first, until you've sold to 100 people with zero feedback, don't make a judgment call. Then when you get there, actually go, only 2 people messed with me and the others were actually not bad. 5 of them left really good feedback as well. That calms a lot of those nerves down. Then on social media, when you see these posts of people who have never tested and they're just worried and they're afraid, you can then share your experience with them as well and kind of shift the tide of this whole zero feedback myth, right? Now, eBay does let you do buyer management, which lets you block buyers who have had unpaid items during the last month or 2. You can select number of unpaid transactions over number of months. And if you want to do that, I've got a link in the description that you can go to and set your preferences accordingly. To me, that's justified. If a buyer is a chronic non-payer, then by doing that, you essentially stop them from adding you to their list of non-payments. You can also block buyers who are in certain countries just because you may feel like you don't trust the post in that country to deliver the item. Some countries have really convoluted postal systems. So Brazil, Mexico, those are quite notorious. I haven't had any issues with them, but I know sellers who have. There are some places like Japan, some places like China, where the buyer's addresses are in their foreign language. eBay shows the foreign language. Then you have to contact the buyer to get the English translation for that foreign language. I'm okay to navigate that, but I know some sellers who have tried to navigate that, and then when they put the English translation, the item just goes missing. So for a bunch of reasons, nothing to do with the buyer being dodgy at all. There's also, I think you can block buyers with less than, say, 5 feedback or 10 feedback or whatever. So you can do all of that in buyer management. But before you get to that, please check your intentions as to why you are activating this feature in your business. Because I want you to succeed, right? I want you to have joy in running your business, to open your doors, to have that feeling of hospitality. I know online it can be a lot. It can feel like, why are we doing this open house thing online? You can. It shows in the way that you reply to messages. Suspicion can come across through text as well. You could, when I reply messages, I'm oftentimes not doing it in the way of, you probably haven't checked your messages, or you probably left the parcel somewhere, or you probably, like I'm just going, let me know if someone in your house may have picked up the parcel on your behalf. And then after that, when they say, oh, no, they haven't, oh, no, I'll open a case for you. Everything is, I'll check. I will inquire before I make a judgment. Because that's how I run my business as a whole. I give my buyers the benefit of the doubt. Because quite frankly, I know nothing about them. So I'm not going to assume. And quite frankly, assumption takes up a lot of mental space. And it just ruins the experience. So in short, sell to your zero feedback buyers, because they could be good buyers as well. If you're not sure, test, do the 100 zero buyer test with me. And more importantly, preserve your joy. Promote that instead, because that will trickle down to your team, and it'll make for a great workplace eventually if you do scale up. Yeah, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.